Imagine this. Your product team is growing, hiring is happening, squads are being formed, and meetings are packed. In theory, it should be great, but in practice, what's growing faster than the team is the chaos. And then you feel like you're constantly putting out fires. People get out of sync with their deliveries, priorities change without explanation, and that sense of we're in this together starts to fade. And then comes the question that every product leader has asked themselves at some point: why does scaling hurt so much? That's right, growing shouldn't be synonymous with losing efficiency. But the truth is that most product organizations don't fall apart because of a lack of talent, they fall apart because of a lack of structure. And what's most curious is that this breakdown is almost never visible at first. It starts with small cracks. An unnecessary meeting here, an uncommunicated decision there, a delivery that needs to be redone because another team was working on the same problem without knowing it. Who hasn't been there, right? These are the silent offenders of scaling. They don't make any noise until the day everything falls apart. And when that happens, the narrative changes. Oh, we need to hire more people. But the truth is, it's not a lack of people, it's a lack of clarity. Scaling a product isn't about stacking people on top of each other. It's about designing an organization that keeps working even when it doubles in size. And that's where what I call predictable growth comes in. Before you grow, you need to design how that growth is going to work. Who decides what? How do squads connect with each other? What roles exist today and which ones will emerge when the company is twice as big? If that's not clear, the chaos is just a matter of time. Because if we have, in my view, if we have the ability to predict or to think, plan, forecast, I think the word is also forecast a budget for the next year, we also have the ability, in a way, or at least we should, to predict how the company will operate as it grows. That should be part of our concern, the concern of a leader. Because I've seen promising teams implode simply because they didn't do this exercise. They started with small squads, super efficient, and when the business scaled, it turned into a maze of responsibilities. Let's say nebulous responsibilities, endless meetings, and paralyzed decisions. Why? Because they grew without a map, they just grew. Now, I think we can't confuse planning because here we're talking about planning. We can't confuse planning with bureaucracy because having a chart with a product org chart, so to speak, that's proactive, or with well-defined areas and a shared roadmap, that's not control. It's freedom with direction. So these tools aren't meant to make things rigid. They're meant to provide visibility to prevent living, each squad living in its own parallel universe, thinking it's solving the same problem in different ways. And here comes a paradox I notice about scaling. The more you grow, the more you need to seem small. This is quite interesting because large teams that remain agile are those that organize themselves into autonomous cells, but that are strategically aligned because autonomy is not anarchy. It's knowing what can be decided within the squad and what needs a shared vision. So the common mistake is thinking that autonomy means everyone for themselves. And then what was supposed to be speed turns into confusion because different squads are chasing different metrics, products are competing for priorities, and the backlog becomes a battlefield. Guys, this is part of the daily routine in many, many companies. I've seen this happen in practice. So I think here, as we think about it, how do we avoid this, right? How could we avoid this? I think basically it's about simplifying decisions. So simplify decisions. Define who has the power to say yes, who can say no. The decision making chain needs to be short, clear, and bold, because if that doesn't happen, the team will feel free, but without knowing where to go. And there's a point that few people talk about, which is when it comes to scaling, that few people talk about when it comes to scaling a product, which is about people. Because in the end, it's always about people, always about folks. Every new hire needs to understand the culture, the purpose, and the way the team thinks about product. So weak onboarding creates noise. And noise at scale turns into dissonance. And here's a secret that I think is interesting to share. The most fragile part of a structure that grows quickly is middle management. So the heads, directors are usually overloaded, and squad leaders are still learning how to lead most of the time. So if you don't invest in them, the rest of the structure collapses because prepared leaders are like shock absorbers. They absorb the impact of growth and keep the culture alive. And since we're talking about culture, I think it's worth emphasizing that no scale can survive without psychological safety, because it's easy to be collaborative when the team has 5 people, but when there are 50, the quieter voices disappear. And with them, ideas, warnings, and opportunities for improvement disappear as well. So, yes, it takes work, but it's better to invest energy in creating safety today than to spend 3 times as much solving crises tomorrow. And about voices, the quieter voices are usually the ones who have the most to contribute. That's usually what happens. So, now an important reminder that I think is worth sharing. Scaling a product is not a project with an end date, it's a continuous process. What worked a year ago, what works today, or what worked a year ago might be exactly what's holding your team back now. Because technology is what will hold your team back tomorrow. Because technology changes, the market changes, and people change their expectations. So your structure needs to evolve along with it. That's why I think it's very worthwhile to create feedback cycles. I think it's something pretty obvious, but it's the obvious things that we tend to forget. Creating feedback cycles is essential because it brings fresh air to the whole mechanism that is your product organizational structure. So regularly ask your team what's working, what's holding things back. What do we need to change to keep things flowing? And always adapt. Scaling successfully is like flying a plane. You're never exactly on the right course. You're always making adjustments all the time. So, the product leader of 2026, let's put it that way, the one of today from 2025 onward, is not just the owner of the backlog, they're the architect of the system, the guardian of clarity, the person who ensures that growth doesn't destroy what made the team great from the very beginning: focus, collaboration, and purpose. When you had a team there, but a lean one, right? And then at the end of all this, I think it's worth us thinking about. I think all of this boils down to a very simple but super interesting question. Are you scaling with clarity or are you scaling with confusion? Because scaling is inevitable, okay? But the type of growth, that's your choice. You can grow fast and break everything, or you can grow consciously with teams that expand but continue to function like a well tuned orchestra. And then when growth comes, and it will come, you won't need to put out fires, right? You'll just need to adjust the pace because the foundation is solid. You built on top of a solid foundation. Because scaling product teams isn't about running faster, it's about growing better, right? And that's the real secret to avoiding chaos. And now a phrase just came to mind that I think is fantastic, and I believe it will close this episode in a very emblematic way. Growing just for the sake of growing is the logic of a cancer cell. So think about that, okay? Think about it, and I hope you're able to design your own growth. How you want to grow your team, your product organizational structure, how you envision the roles, the processes, and then, of course, you adapt as this growth happens. But at least you have a more tangible map. You're not just absorbing whatever comes your way and simply building makeshift solutions and just going with the flow. You're actually building something more structured. Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed it, enjoyed my company because I really loved being here for this episode. And I'll see you around. See you in the next episode.